Hi, thanks for joining us today. I'm Kathy Healy with PTC's Next Steps Transition Training Program. Our program is funded by a grant from the U.S. Department of Education Rehabilitation Services Administration. We are partnering with Virginia Commonwealth University RRTC to bring you information about topics pertinent to the transition of students with disabilities from secondary school. This program is offering CEUs and CRCs to professionals and also a parent training certificate as well. PTC has been around for more than 30 years. We're the Parent Training and Information Center for Virginia. We've been fielding inquiries from families about all things connected to special education and general education, and how families can be really good support systems for their children and young adults with disabilities. So we invite your phone calls and your emails. And you can reach us at 800-869-6782 for Virginia parents, or locally at 703-923-0010. We invite you to visit our website, where you will find information about other transition-related webinars. And we also invite you later today, after this presentation, to take a short evaluation and also participate in a web board discussion with our presenter. We're very happy today to have information about universal design for learning. Traditionally, students with disabilities have left high school and were expected to go to a sheltered workshop or go to some kind of a training program or maybe not be employed. But what we know today is that many, many students with disabilities are actually graduating with high school diplomas, going on to college, going on to employment. But even for other students with very high support needs, we are understanding more and more about brain function and how, if we design programs appropriately, everybody can learn. And what we really want to instill in our transition age students with disability is a love for lifelong learning, not just what they're going to get in the classroom, but certainly beyond, because lifelong learning is good for everyone. Even my own son, who has an intellectual disability and who graduated high school about 3 or 4 years ago, even he is able to access lifelong learning. He has a laptop. He is part of a reading program. The reading program is very motivating for him. He's learning vocabulary. He's learning about phonics. And generally, it is enhancing how he performs on his job and in his community. So we advocate that lifelong learning is not just something that a certain group of people should be privy to, but that it is good for all people. And so today, Fran Smith, who is with Virginia Commonwealth University, she's the coordinator of technology and distance learning at VCU and has been spending a number of years studying Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, is going to present information about the guiding principles for UDL and how families can really access information and start thinking about how they can incorporate some of those principles for their young people with disabilities as they transition into adulthood. We're very excited to have Fran here today. And if you have questions, please stay tuned for the web board. She'll be happy to entertain your questions. Thank you very much. Fran?
Good afternoon. I'm Fran Smith. I'm Coordinator of Technology for the Virginia Department of Education's Training and Technical Assistance Center at Virginia Commonwealth University and a collateral faculty in the School of Education. And today I want to talk to you about keeping students in love with learning through Universal Design for Learning and families. It's a topic that's very dear to my heart and something that I think is an educational framework that we can all learn from. One of the challenges that we find today is that today's typical classroom might include students whose first language is not English, students who are not reading on grade level, students who have behavioral or attentional and motivational problems, and students from varied cultural backgrounds. In that situation, as educators, we need to be mindful of the types of strategies technologies and approaches that we use that we can reach all learners. When we apply a framework such as Universal Design for Learning, we shift our approaches to the more traditional classroom approaches, which favor a sage on the stage, so to speak, approach, to more flexible classroom approaches where we involve various ways to engage the learner in the experience, involve more discussion, involve more technologies so that all learners can learn. I'd like to start by defining what universal design is and where that comes from. Universal design borrows from four key areas that we've been able to build from, such as assistive technology, the concept of universal design known in the built environment through architectural designs, the importance of building in accessible design so that we're reaching all individuals through the computer media that we use, and the fact that we design things that are usable by all through usability standards. The definition of universal design has been defined by a number of pieces of legislation and was first defined also through the Center for Universal Design, which is at the North Carolina State University, defined as a means of designing and delivering products and services that are usable by people with the widest possible range of functional capabilities, which include properties and services that are directly usable without requiring assistive technologies, and products and services that are made usable with assistive technologies. That particular definition also comes from the original act, which was the Assistive Technology Act of 1998, which also built on the Assistive Technology Act of 1988. We then had the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act amendments in 2004, which took universal design and defined it into the context of learning as an approach to teaching, learning, curriculum development, and assessment that uses new technologies to respond to a variety of individual learner differences. Another piece of the IDEA 2004 legislation was the National Instructional Materials Accessibility Act of 2004. We call that the NIMAS standard. And the NIMAS standard is a technical standard used by publishers to produce source files in an XML language that may be used to develop multiple specialized formats. So those of us who are working with individuals who might require the use of an audiobook, a Braille format, or a different kind of format to work with an assistive technology can benefit from a universal format that we can access. In Virginia, we also have the system through AIM Virginia at George Mason University, and there we have developed an alternate system of providing accessible educational materials and standards set by NIMAS to students who meet the federal requirements for print disabilities and who are eligible for assessing educational media under individual IEPs. Finally, in 2008, we saw the first official definition of universal design for learning embraced in the Higher Education Opportunity Act of 2008. And in that act, we see that universal design for learning is defined as a scientifically valid framework for guiding educational practice that first provides flexibility in the ways information is presented, in the ways students respond or demonstrate knowledge and skills, and in the ways students are engaged. It reduces barriers in instruction, provides appropriate accommodations, supports, and challenges, and maintains high achievement expectations for all students, including students with disabilities and students who are limited English proficient. What we've seen over the years is the ability for us to capture the true spirit of universal design from the built environment now into the classroom so that we can work towards reaching all learners. Universal design for learning is all about a civil rights legacy and the importance of access for all. So when we think about, for example, an environment for an architectural situation, as you can see in this slide, universal design thinks about access for all individuals. So we build, in this case, a rounded sidewalk where an elevation is built in ahead of time for someone who might use a wheelchair. And we also have access points so anyone can reach that door, as opposed to an old design where we have concrete stairs, which would be an obvious barrier to someone with a wheelchair. So we design ahead of time and try to avoid the fact that we'd have to retrofit after the fact. Some examples in universal design that we've seen over the years are the types of things that many of us use today, like curb cuts. Curb cuts were designed for individuals to have a smooth access when they're crossing over a barrier such as that, but many mothers use curb cuts when they're strolling their children. They're useful for rollerbladers when they're going through a access point. We also have closed captioning, and closed captioning was designed for individuals who, of course, are deaf or hard of hearing. But we see more use of closed captioning in sports bars and in places in homes where individuals would rather have a closed captioning across the bottom of a screen rather than listening to that noise. And some other examples here that we see in universal design increasingly in smart home development, where you have a shelf like the one in this picture in the far right of the screen, so that someone who perhaps is in a wheelchair in a room or needs to have something brought down to their height has that easy access. That brings us to the main topic of today, which is about universal design for learning, and a philosophy and framework that has been coined by researchers at the Center for Applied Special Technology in Massachusetts. These folks have looked at the research around effective practices in instructional delivery, effective ways that individuals learn, and the benefits of what we know through the neurosciences. Added to that, the value of using technology when we can to make a more flexible learning environment are all part of the philosophy underpinning this. So a lot of what I'm sharing with you today comes directly from their materials and resources, and we'll visit that again at the end of the presentation. The origins of UDL from CAS perspective is based on a philosophy that believes that barriers to learning are not in fact inherent in the capacities of learners, but instead arise in learners' interactions with inflexible educational goals, materials, methods, and assessments. If we think about universal design again, we start with how we develop that in the built environment, and one of the key pioneers in looking at universal design from that standpoint was Ron Mace. And Ron was an architect working at North Carolina State University, as well as a consumer who happened to use a wheelchair. And he realized that we needed to think more about how we designed environments and how we designed products so that we could reach the needs of the broadest possible range of users from the beginning, rather than, again, thinking about retrofitting after the fact. An important philosophy of universal design for learning, and one that we are excited about in today's world, is the value of looking at ways of offering material that's not just bound to a print format. And a lot of times books and other curriculum materials are often inaccessible to students when we have them in that format. So it prevents barrier. The barrier that's prevented is a fixed media. If we think about a fixed media for students in our classroom, or students who go to college and students who go into the work setting, it's very difficult for an individual who might have dyslexia, who might speak a second language, who may have a visual impairment because they're blind, or who may have a learning disability, where the book in printed format is a very inflexible format, and we cannot utilize the technologies that allow that user to enlarge the print, to speak the text out loud, to utilize color enhancing that makes that experience that much easier and that much more beneficial for them. So number one, books and printed materials are a barrier that we'd like to try to avoid. Second, when we think about universal design for learning, we celebrate the fact that we all have different learning styles. We all have different ways of knowing. Some of us are auditory learners, some of us are visual learners, some of us are hands-on learners. But given the chance to use the style that we learn, usually will bring forth the success that we're looking for. And it celebrates the value of multiple intelligence theories, where we look at the types of intelligences that we all bring to the table, not just one or two. Universal Design for Learning is also an educational framework that celebrates a number of educational approaches, such as apprenticeship learning, where we think about an approach that encompasses active models of skilled performance, so that we can give models to an individual to show them what it looks like to achieve the type of a success that we're hoping they will achieve in a classroom setting or on a work situation, that scaffolds the support to support the learner, that provides ample opportunities for practice and provides ongoing, immediate, and relevant feedback. And collectively, all of these help us to reach a more flexible way of learning that supports a learner. Universal Design for Learning also takes into account new insights that we've been able to gain from brain research about the nature of learner differences, and helps us to weave that into a century of best practices in progressive education. So when we think about universal design from learning from a neuroscience perspective, what CAST has been able to help us see is that the research they're looking at shows us that there are actually 3 distinct networks involved in the learning process. They're interconnected systems, but they're each 3 distinct in their own way. They're known as the recognition network, the strategic network, and the affective network. So just to give you an example of how we might involve those, think about the first thing you did, at least for me, the first thing you did this morning when you made that cup of coffee. Your recognition networks help you to recognize the coffee pot. It has to do with the what in the learning process. So I'm familiar with where the coffee pot is in my home, and I'm able to find that. The strategic networks have to do with the process of learning. So they help me to remember the steps that I need to make that coffee and how I integrate those steps successfully to make that happen. And then the affective networks confirm the reason why I'm engaged in making the coffee to begin with. And it's why I get that engagement with the entire process and the aroma of the coffee that I smell in the morning after it's completed. So those are the 3 networks involved in the learning process. So I'm going to start with describing those a little more in detail, beginning with the recognition network. Again, the recognition network has to do with the what of the learning process. It helps us to identify and interpret patterns of sound, light, taste, smell, and touch. Everyday examples of recognition network include identifying ingredients for recipes, telling the difference between shampoo and shaving cream, so you can wash your hair, identifying the smell of freshly cut grass. For individuals who are from different cultures, for individuals who may have difficulty with their recognition networks, those can be a difficult thing for them to do. So what we try to encourage is to consider ways to support that. A fundamental principle of universal design for learning is to provide multiple approaches. And in this case, we're trying to provide multiple approaches in the way we represent the information. So we might provide alternate formats for the ways we present information. That for some learners could be a print way. For other learners, that might be in a digital format. We might provide that in a model. We might provide that in a demonstration. We might provide multiple examples. We want to try and highlight critical features of what we're instructing. We want to provide multiple media and formats And we want to utilize strategies that support background context because, again, not knowing the learner's background and not knowing what they bring to the learning situation, helps us to provide as many opportunities to strengthen those recognition networks. Another example of providing multiple examples in the recognition network is to pair visual information with auditory information, or in this example, providing a graphic organizer format so we can highlight the critical features in a visual, doing hands-on activities, and using active note-taking. The second network in the UDL framework is known as the strategic brain networks. These have to do with the how of the learning process. A lot of the executive functions that we have to plan, execute, and monitor actions and skills are involved in this process. In learning situations, strategic networks are critical. They have to do with how we complete a project, how we take a test, how we take notes, how we listen to a lecture. For a number of individuals, those are very difficult tasks for them to organize simultaneously. So what we want to do in an educational or work situation, or even at home, is to try to provide flexible models, again, of skill performance, offering models so we can show an individual what that looks like when they reach that completion. Provide opportunities to practice with supports. When I'm teaching a class, I often utilize the electronic track changes features in Microsoft Word so that I can electronically scaffold the learning process of my students so that they can learn from my comments. Provide ongoing, engaging, relevant feedback through the process. Offering flexible opportunities for demonstrating skill and providing alternative means for action and expression. So again, in the class that I've taught in Universal Design for Learning, I try to provide students the chance to both offer me a written paper or in some cases provide a digital project that complements the same goals that we're working on but gives them a different way of showing me what they do. When we think about multiple means for supporting expression, we also take into account the many benefits of technology, especially a lot of the assistive technologies that we've used over the years. So for some students, allowing students to dictate test answers and written assignments with their voice is an important solution for them. Allowing them to use a model, a picture representation, allowing the use of a word processor or word prediction program to aid the writing process. All of these are important in supporting the strategic networks. Finally, the UDL philosophy looks at the third area of the brain, which is the affective network, located in the core of the brain. And this has to do with the emotional significance, the reason why we get engaged with the learning process. They enable us to engage with a task and influence our motivation to learn. They are responsible for developing preferences and establishing priorities and interests. In learning situations, affective networks are essential to wanting to learn. And often students who come into classrooms, or any of us go into a learning situation, depending on the time of day, depending on how we got up out of the bed in the morning, and how we approach that learner is very important in engaging that process. So providing alternative means for engagement might involve offering choices of content and tools, offering adjustable levels of challenge, offering choices of rewards, and offering choices in learning context. Universal Design for Learning, through the CAST resource that we'll look at in a moment, provides us with a wonderful graphical arrangement of what these three principles and connecting them to these three networks entails. So under the recognition networks, again, we're providing multiple ways to support means of representation. So in that case, we might provide options for perception, options for language and symbols, options for comprehension. In supporting the multiple ways to support expression and the strategic networks, we look at ways for providing options for physical action, options for expressive skills and fluency, and options for executive functions. And finally, in engagement, under multiple means of engaging the learning experience and engaging the affective networks, we provide multiple options for recruiting interest, multiple options for sustaining effort and persistence, and multiple options for self-regulation. A number of examples are provided on this graphic, and you can find this graphic on the National Universal Design for Learning website, as well as on the CAST website, which we will revisit again at the end of the presentation. But I think you'll find some of these web references provided in your materials. Key to the philosophy of Universal Design for Learning as an essential educational framework is that we concentrate on 4 key areas: the goals and milestones that we're trying to achieve. And it doesn't mean that we change the goals of what we're trying to teach or the goals of the work task that we're trying to teach the student to accomplish. It does have to do with the approach that we take, the media and the methods that we use, the instructional methods that we employ, and the means of assessment that we use. So let's look at that for a moment. So if you think about a traditional classroom setting or a traditional learning situation, learning goals may get skewed by the inflexible ways and means of achieving them. In a UDL approach, learning goals are attained in many individual ways by many customized means. So we again give the learner the opportunity to show us what they can learn in their way. If we think about materials that are used in the traditional sense, again, typically print is distributed as a means of reaching everyone and getting the same materials. We offer few options. In a UDL approach, a variety of materials, media, and formats to reach learners with diverse abilities, styles, and needs equally well supports that philosophy. If we think about traditional methods that we use in those situations, they're typically very teacher-centered, where we rely on a lecture approach. They're homogeneous in their grouping, and the burden is placed on the student to adapt to get it, when in fact under a UDL approach, we involve more interactivity, we have more heterogeneous groupings, and we use rich supports for understanding independent learning. And finally, in assessment, traditional goals often confuse goals with the means and are summative when it's too late to adjust instruction. Whereas under UDL, many possible means, as long as they measure learning, are used, and we support instructional improvement. So the assessment process becomes an ongoing continuum that we can look at, adjust, and work with the learner over the time. Certainly, digital media is not the only approach that we employ in a successful UDL framework, but it's one that's increasingly used in today's world and provides us to be a lot more flexible in the ways that we provide the material. If we utilize digital media, we have the ability to be more versatile in the text. We can change the text size very easily for someone who has low vision or is having trouble reading because of their vision problems. We have the ability to infuse images, to utilize sound, to utilize video, to bring a richer experience to that media. We also can transform media more quickly if we use digital media. We can add within media variations in the text, in the size, in the pitch, and in the speed of the presentation, which can be very helpful for someone who has a different learning approach or a learning difference. I actually have a couple of digital technologies that I'd like to demonstrate with you today. One is the Apple iTouch, and some users have also the Apple iPhone. We're real excited about these types of technologies because they utilize a very contemporary tool that most people have in the mainstream. And increasingly, we're seeing a lot of these applications, or as many people know them as apps. And I have on my iTouch actually a couple of apps that bring forth some really promising tools. One is, see if I can bring that forward there for you to look at. Several of the apps that we like on here are electronic books, and some of the books that you can use, you can download from Kindle if you're a Kindle user. You can use a book we know as Stanza, which gives you the ability to control a little bit of the font size and the background color, which can be very helpful. We also have an application on here known as Speak It, which provides the ability to type in the text that you're interested in typing in, and I'm just going to type in UDL here and then speak it, and I can hear that text spoken out loud. So that can be a real helpful tool if I'm trying to speak with my iTouch or my iPhone. Now, one of the distinctions with the iTouch and the iPhone is that one of the recent apps that we've seen is Dragon Naturally Speaking for voice activation. So there we're using the iPhone technology, but what's really exciting about these types of tools is that we can not only use apps, but we can take a Word document, turn it into an MP3 file, and add that to my collection of documents that I carry with me. And then if I have a tool on the app that allows me to speak it out loud, I can use that more easily. Or I can listen to that MP3 file while I'm walking or while I'm driving in my car. So that's one tool. The other tool that I'd like to show you is known as the LiveScribe. And the LiveScribe is a wonderful new technology that allows me to have a custom notebook, which looks like any other piece of notebook with paper, and a customized pen. So what this provides is a support for me if I'm in a class and I'm taking notes with my pen, but I'd also like to capture the auditory lecture from the instructor. Or maybe I'm in a setting where I'm getting instructions on how to be successful in a work task, and I want to, again, record the steps as well as write them down. So how this works is at the bottom of my paper I have some places where I can calibrate my pen. So again, I have to have a special paper to work with this pen. And I'm going to press record, which will give me an auditory cue that my pen is ready to go. And I'm going to start taking notes about this is an example of using a LiveScribe pen. When I'm finished, I just simply click on Stop, which stops the recording, and this pen is designed to take a photograph as well as an auditory recording of what I'm writing. When I go back to my notes, I simply place the pen on the sentence. Example of using a LiveScribe pen. So I can hear right at that moment what I've been writing. I can listen to that with the headphones that are provided with the pen. I can upload these files, these auditory files, back to my computer. And as an instructor, I can take advantage of those files as a support to my students if I want to, again, scaffold their learning process for students who may be weaker in their strategic networks. A wonderful tool. I can purchase this at Target. Runs me about $140. So it's an exciting time with the use of technology in today's world as a way to benefit an effective educational framework such as Universal Design for Learning. Universal Design for Learning digital supports for success can include online instruction, digital textbooks and printed materials, continuously improve speech recognition, captioning videos, providing audio descriptions of video, providing text descriptions of graphics, and using text aloud functions. A number of tools are freely available today on the internet, one of which we use quite a bit for text aloud functions is a tool known as Read Please. Another one that we use is known as Natural Reader. Both are freely available on the web and allow you to have those on your computer and to speak aloud the text or speak aloud the website that you're visiting, which can be an important support for someone who needs that. I sometimes need that myself during the day. There are 3 ongoing national initiatives that will probably be of interest to all of you. One is the National Universal Design for Learning Center, and the National UDL Center launched last year and provides us with a one-stop shop for resources on the basics about Universal Design for Learning, the graphic that I showed you earlier that gives you the 3 basic principles and the 9 areas around those principles you can find at this site, along with some best practices in what's happening in the research, some areas of advocacy and areas that are calling for change in the field, and then a place to communicate and connect with others around the country who are employing Universal Design for Learning successfully. The National Community of Practice on Universal Design for Learning is a new online national community of practice through the IDEA Partnerships web portal sharedwork.org. If you're not a member of Shared Work, it's an easy thing to register, and you can go to that location and find the National Community of Practice on Universal Design for Learning, where we're building a community across the country of interested individuals across all stakeholders who want to see the growth of this philosophy extended to many environments. And finally, the National UDL Task Force, which represents the voices of over 35 national associations and builds a unified voice in trying to bring together efforts that help us look at legislation and change around Universal Design for Learning. This particular group has been instrumental in why we now have the definition of UDL in the Higher Education Opportunity Act. And they are instrumental right now in working towards bringing that into additional pieces of legislation and bills. 2 documents that will be of interest to families that I've included in this presentation. One is a parent advocacy group that's put out by the National Center on Learning Disabilities, known as A Parent's Guide to Universal Design for Learning, which will help you to look at how to take all of the principles that we've talked about today and the strategies and apply those at your situation and at home, as well as a fact sheet for families from the National Center on Universal Design for Learning, which again looks at the same approach and gives you some information that you can bring into your situation. For more information, again, I'd encourage you to look at the Center for Applied Special Technology at CAST, the National UDL Task Force, and the National Center on Universal Design. This is a wonderful opportunity to also thank the partners at PETSI who have made this available to you today and will provide us with an electronic means for you to bring forth questions in a discussion forum online. Thank you.